All right, what's up, guys? Um, so finally getting chance to get back and stream again and kind of pick up where we left off. I did do some minor things offline, off stream, and I kind of want to go over that real quick. Honestly, it wasn't much. I think the main things that I did were first, I actually added a bunch of skills using the skills CLI from Vercel. Since we're doing this with Cursor, you know, and we're kind of gonna now develop, like, I think the harder part. I kind of wanted to just make sure that Cursor could have some guidelines, some skills for actually, you know, kind of sticking to the best practices and to like good architecture. So mainly, I'll go real quick. I won't really get into them, but I basically added one for Docker Expert. That's just so it kind of knows what it's doing when it comes to the Docker image that we're deploying. I think we're gonna have to at some point just optimize the way that's getting built, just so the builds can go a little faster. Again, that's minor. I added a documentation one. I think this one is from Matteo Colina, which is the Node.js. He sits on the Node.js. Well, he's one of the top Node.js contributors, and I think he's also on the JavaScript committee team. What's it called? What's the thing called? TC39. So I kind of like anything that he does, I kind of always try to follow, and he has some pretty good ones. I'm pretty sure this one is from him. So, you know, the nice thing about the Vercel skills CLI is that it's kind of like your npm packages, because it actually installs them and keeps a skills log JSON. And you can see here, like, you know where the source is from. It kind of has a hash from the version that you're installing, so you can pin it and keep that one. And then, for example, if we look at the documentation one here, where is it? Yeah, so it's from Matteo Colina. So from him, I have a few. So I also installed the init one. This is like just kind of informing Cursor about the best practices for actually setting up agents and like agent files for Cursor, etc. This is not best practices, which is obviously from him too. That's kind of like a no-brainer. And then he has one called TypeScript Magician. I thought that was cool. I kind of glanced at it and it definitely looked okay. Not okay, but it looked pretty good. And then I also installed this one, which was pretty popular, TypeScript Advanced Types. It also has some pretty good stuff there about just more advanced stuff, like I mean, not even advanced stuff, but like map types, which I feel like Cursor sometimes misses. Discriminated unions. It has just more advanced stuff like conditionals, conditional types, and it actually has some guidelines for avoiding like way too complicated nested types, which can also sometimes impact the actual TypeScript performance when it's compiling real time in your editor. So I thought that was nice. And then I think, you know, I'll just go real quick to the other ones that I added, one for ElectroDB. That's like the framework that we're going to use for Dynamo. I feel like Cursor, it's probably not that knowledgeable in terms of the actual model, knowing how to use ElectroDB, even though it seemed to have done a good job at the beginning. Since this is probably more like a niche library, I feel like DynamoDB, even with how big it is, in general, it's not, you know, as used as like the other typical databases that you have out there, like obviously Postgres, but like in the NoSQL world, I feel like Mongo is kind of somehow more popular. Honestly, yeah. So those are the main ones. What else? Oh yeah, I added one from Pulumi. This is from the actual Pulumi repo. So again, I think that's another no-brainer. And I think the one that I like the most, or the one that I think is the most important one, is this one here. Software design philosophy. So this one actually tries to inspire, or inspires itself from the book called A Philosophy of Software Design, which I think it's an awesome read. I think, you know, I'm not one to read like a ton of programming books, like front to back. Obviously, I've done it with a few ones that really have caught, yeah, like definitely caught me, and this was one of them. Definitely recommend it. I even liked it so much that I tried to do like a tweet storm with like some summaries of the stuff that I kind of highlighted in my Kindle. So yeah, this skill seemed to encompass that, and I actually wanted it not to be a skill. I kind of wanted Cursor to like always really follow those principles. And the thing with the skill is if I show it to you guys here, where is it? Yeah. So it's like, it's not always using it. It's because again, it's a skill. So it's just used when the user mentions module design, API too complex, shallow class, complexity budget, or strategic versus tactical. It's like, you know, I might not mention none of that when I'm like talking to Cursor. So what I did was I had Cursor go over the skill and kind of come up with kind of like a summary, and then create an actual .agents file, which is here, which basically has a summary. And this, again, the agents.md file, sorry, is always picked up by Cursor. Like, it's always using it in context. So hopefully, you know, it kind of gets what I want to follow just based on that one. And then I think this is now also referencing the skill. Let me see. Yeah, maybe not, but it kind of already should know that, you know, if I'm designing something, or if we explicitly ask it to do something about design, like, it should probably just invoke that skill. So that's one of the things that I did offline. And then the other one is not as hard. I basically just hit go on implementing phase 2, right? If we go back to original plan, which I actually saved in the repo, as you guys remember last time. So this is phase 2, right? Basically everything that we talked about initially. So if you guys remember, this is kind of like the architecture, right? Let me hide this so this is bigger, maybe. Actually, no. It's probably better like that. So yeah, there's gonna be like a bot services layer here, which has a bunch of things like, you know, it kind of came up with a command handler, a priming service. The priming service is basically what's going to encompass the logic for whenever the bot gets added to a group, it's going to go back in time and kind of like know about that group, so it can initialize its knowledge base for that group. That's a gist, I think, of what's going to be there. And then I'm not sure what it's going to do with context service. There's going to be a response generator, which is a thing that gets triggered to invoke the AI layer, which will just use AWS Bedrock, right? We're going to start with Claude Haiku, and then yeah, for embeddings we're going to use a Titan model, and then for actually storing the vectors we're going to use the newly added S3 vector support, which should be, we'll see how that works because I haven't used it before and I think it's pretty new, but it should be good. Like, I didn't want to go for like a whole like new database and just for vectors. Like, you know, could have used Postgres with pgvector. Elasticsearch has support now for vectors. We could have gone with like another one like Quadrant and deployed in AWS, but I honestly didn't want to go for that. I love that S3 added vectors because, you know, S3 is S3. So and then yeah, you know, obviously the DynamoDB layer via ElectroDB, which is just your ORM. So I'm not gonna go over the plan because we kind of already glanced at that one. I kind of want to look at the code. So what I did was I actually hit, you know, implement, and you'll see here that it actually checked off all of the phase 2 bullet points. So the ones that it had were set up ElectroDB with message member and group entities, implement group join detection and auto registration. So I think that that's for like basically knowing when it gets added to a group. Auto registration, I'm assuming that it's referencing that thing that we just looked at, which is the priming service. I'm assuming, we'll see. The build command handler, build command handler with personality and help. Okay, so it actually went for that. So that's something that I actually wanted or would have preferred to do in a phase 3. I guess I just kind of didn't tell it that, but again, it just went for it. We'll see. Build priming service for message history ingestion. Integrate Bedrock Titan for embedding and S3 vectors. Create LLM powered response generator with personalities, build Wednesday, list correction logic. So apparently it did everything. I'm gonna be surprised if it actually like got it in one shot. Pretty sure it won't, or you know, but it did change a shit ton of files here, which is, I guess, good and bad. What did I stage here? Okay, let's actually read what it told me it did here. So it says phase 2 implementation is complete. Here's a summary of what was built. Infrastructure, Pulumi, DynamoDB tables, Stoa Labs, WhatsApp bot with GSI for member queries. Okay, S3 bucket, S3 vectors bucket. Okay, so it's using a separate bucket for the vectors. Maybe that's a requirement. I'm fine with that. For embedding storage, updated IAM policy with DynamoDB, S3 vectors, and Bedrock permissions. Okay, that's good. I'm assuming it did that on the Pulumi folder. Yeah, Lightsail, S3 vectors. Okay. Damn. The fuck is this song? Pretty good. Alright, so what else? So the database layer, message entity is gonna store the group messages with contact info and timestamps. Member entity tracks members per group with message counts and knowledge summaries. So that's kind of what it's gonna use. It's pretty simple, I think, but it's gonna use that for like keeping track of, like, you know, how a member is or behaves. What I was thinking that could actually entail would be that, you know, it's actually just a text field that has a bunch of either a summary generated by AI or like an actual, and you know, maybe that summary will include like actual example messages of how the person speaks and talks, so he kind of knows how it behaves. And then group entity stores group settings including personality and priming status. Okay. Services, group service, auto registers groups on join startup. Syncs all groups. Okay. Priming service fetches up to 100,000 messages, 6 months history. So those are the kind of like constraints we gave it, and stores them in DynamoDB. Embedding service generates embeddings using Bedrock Titan V2. That makes sense. Vector stores service stores queries embeddings in S3 vectors. Okay. Response generator generates contextual replies using Claude 3.5 Haiku with personality support. List corrector tracks Wednesday match list entries and post corrections. This I'm sure we're gonna have to like iterate on, because I haven't even given it the kind of like format of the message that gets sent out with the list. So I'm not sure how it's gonna detect it right now. Also, I'm curious to see if it try to like roll up its own like algorithm for doing the detection. I actually was planning to just let AI do it. So like when it detects that the list was sent, and when it detects that the last person in the list like kind of wrote themselves down, it would actually just grab the whole history in between, send it to the AI, and tell it like, okay, determine if we missed anyone or if anyone is misplaced based on these timelines for each message, and then compose a final correct list with the correct order. That way we don't even have to build like an algorithm in code for doing that. I think the LLM should pretty easily be able to handle that, but we'll see. And then commands, we're gonna have personality name, view change bot personality, neutral, Venezuelan bully. Okay. Prime, manually trigger message history ingestion. That's interesting. I didn't tell it to do that, but show bot status for the group. Help, list available commands. That's cool. Run npm install to install new dependencies, deploy infrastructure, test locally with npm run bot. Okay, so it did catch this. You may need to write the exact Wednesday list message format for better detection. Alright, so let's actually look at the code. Let's see. So it added Alias SDK client Bedrock runtime. This usually you wanna match the version for all of your packages, because if not you get versioning issues. Let me see what the actual versions that this one has available are. 110 versions. Yeah, so it doesn't have it. I guess we'll just go with that one. It's fine. Install ElectroDB. Is that the latest version? The latest version is 3.7.1. Yeah, I don't want it to go to version 2. I think it might have done that because the skill that I installed is actually for V2. So I might just get rid of it. Alright, so let me start telling that. So the latest ElectroDB version is actually 3.71. Why did you install 2.14? libdynamodb. I guess we need that one. So it didn't install that many packages. All right, so let's look at this table. I kind of don't like when it does this, you know? It's like, yeah, it gives flexibility, but we know we're not gonna do that many. Like right now you have like a bunch, you can create a bunch of GSIs. I'd rather have like something that's more readable here. Also for the table, the main Dynamo table, let's not go crazy with the GSI naming. I like that you did PK and SK for the primary key and sort keys. That's fine. I didn't love that you did GSI1, GSI1 PK, GSI1 SK for the secondary index. I mean, I know that that's normally the pattern for single table design, but we're gonna do like an in-between of that. I think the global secondary index can just be named more for what it is. I think you want to do by groups, if I'm not mistaken, and then you can just call it like that by whatever. You can use underscore to separate the name. So you know, just do snake case, and then same thing for the hash keys, right? the hash keys for the GSI can just be actually readable. So I think you would use, let me see what it would actually use. Yeah, so it's by members. And then projection type is fine for that. Table name. I'm not sure why it's doing that. I don't like that. I guess it's fine for now. We'll leave it like that. Okay, so it's giving it access to the new, yeah, to the new S3 vector bucket, right? Apparently we need create index, list indexes. Shouldn't this be list indices? Put vectors. I guess we'll trust it and we'll find out. Put vectors, query vectors, get vectors, delete vectors on the vectors bucket ARN. Okay. And then for the table, we need get item, put item, update item, delete item, query scan, batch get item, batch write item on the table and then on any index. That's fine. And then we're going to allow the Bedrock invoke model on any. I think that makes sense. So I'm not going to keep that yet. I'll keep this. We'll keep all this. I'm not sure why it's not giving the keep all button here. This is just importing it. So we can deploy to Pulumi. Why did it change? Light cell. Oh, that's right. So we're probably going to need to pass some names here to the actual container so the code can actually access it. Yeah, so we need to pass it the actual S3 vectors bucket name and then the DynamoDB table name. For now, we know we're only going to have one, and I think it's going to stay like that, honestly, for the foreseeable future. We won't have that many entities, or like the data model is not that complicated for now. So I think all of this is fine. Zero viewers, averaging zero viewers. This is like my 10th stream. That's amazing. Not even like one single chat message. It's kind of weird, right? Oh, Jesus. No one's there. All right, so we create a file for the S3 vectors. I kind of don't like that convention. I kind of want to tell it that. I want to leave like that. I prefer like dash delimited names for the Pulumi files and in general for TypeScript files. But I'll leave it like this. Force the story, force the story true. That's fine. The bucket name. Mm-hmm. It's all fine. Okay. All right. Here's where the fun starts, I guess. Now we're getting to the actual code. It's creating a bunch of services, passing and injecting the logger. Creates a command handler. create message handler. Then the handle message takes config logger group service command handler and response generator. And then handle message gets kind of called the same way. So when it starts, it's wanting to sync the groups. Okay, interesting. Not sure if we want to do that every time the service starts. We'll wait to see the logic. Group join, is this a real thing? Let's look at the docs here. Let's look at the client. Group. What's it? What is it? Group join? Yep, group join is a thing. Emitted when a user joins a chat via the invite link or is added by an admin. Okay, so it's apparently when anybody joins. I don't know why it's typing that. I think it should just have it typed already, right? Yeah. I gotta tell it to not do this crazy, like, kind of goes crazy with the explicit types when all of this is already implicitly typed based on the name of the event. So this can go. So it's gonna go just, it's doing an async Giphy. It's getting the chat and then chat is group. I mean, how does that make sense? Of course it's gonna be a group, right? If it's getting the group join. All right, so I'm gonna ask that question before I forget. Also, can you sanity check me or sanity check yourself when you did client that on group join and you started registering the group every time someone joins, right? Is that what we want? Because I think that group join notification happens when anybody joins the group, right? And I think we really only want to register the group when the bot joins the group, right? So are we missing a check there or am I missing something? And then a message list corrector handle message. And where is it creating the list corrector here? Okay, I guess that's fine. Let's not accept this right now. Helpful and straightforward. Your helpful assistant in a WhatsApp group chat. Be concise, friendly, and informative. Keep responses brief. 1 to 3 sentences unless more detail is needed. That's good. Playful, witty, teasing Venezuelan style. You're a Venezuelan friend, a soccer group chat. You're playful, witty, and love to tease your friends in a friendly way. Be sarcastic and bust people's balls, but never mean spirited. Keep responses short and punchy, like real WhatsApp messages. If someone makes a mistake or says something dumb, roast them lovingly. Respond in Spanish with Venezuelan flavor. I mean, I liked all of this for now. We're gonna go with that and test it out. So where is it putting this? Is it putting all this in WhatsApp DB? I think that's fine. DB data entities. I think that's fine. I mean, I would have loved to maybe do something different there. Like, let's keep it simple. Let's go with that. So it's doing DynamoDB client, DynamoDB document client from the lib DynamoDB, right? And the doc client, I'm sure it is passed to the ElectroDB service. Yeah. So the way ElectroDB service works is that you kind of like define your entities per file, and then you create a service, what they call a service, pass it your entities, pass it the document client, and pass it the table. And then you can export the entities to kind of you know, use them wherever. So I think that seems okay. Some linting types here, linting errors, I should say. Let's keep that. Bro, what are the chances that it actually kind of one-shots this? I think I'm gonna have to actually enable the Bedrock models. Okay, I'm not gonna keep this because I want to change the naming here. Let's look at the group entity. Personality type, neutral, Venezuelan bully. Oh, this is the other nice thing about ElectroDB. It's kind of already like strongly typed based on this thing here. It has like first class TypeScript support, which I think is nice. It's the first time I'm working with it. I've looked at it in the past. I used the one I was using before was typed ORM, not to be confused with type ORM. It's like typed ORM. It was specifically for DynamoDB. I think it was good, but the maintainer wasn't really on top of it, and it's been a while. It had some quirks, and this one seems way more maintained, way more used, and I just gotta learn to work with it. So the best time is now, I guess, right? So yeah, it's gonna do model entity group version 1. I guess there's versioning for the groups as you change them. That could be cool. Service WhatsApp. I'm not sure why you gotta specify service here. I'm not sure what that's for. So I guess it's kind of like how you scope it. It has probably like support for namespacing. We'll see how that works in a bit. Attributes, group ID, type string, required true. That makes sense. Group name, type string. I would assume that should have been required, right? Personality, type string, default neutral. Class, type string, default personality type. In the group.ts group entity file, are you sure the personality type is defined correctly? I didn't 100% follow the as casting there, where you're saying that the default is personality type, where the default you're specifying is neutral. That didn't completely make sense to me. All right, so primed. Yeah, prime that, join that. List correction enabled. That's kind of probably unnecessary. I also don't think that we probably need the list correction enabled boolean at the group entity level. I think we can just do like, you know, you know what? Let's. I'm gonna actually keep that. I think that way we won't run that logic in. But I don't know. I feel like that's very like ad hoc, right? I was thinking that, you know, like a group could have like different features like built in, maybe like some plugin system, right? And then that's how we model it. But I'm not sure what I'm gonna do there, so it's like I don't want to like pre-design or like design that abstraction too early. So you know what? I'm gonna go with this. Indexes primary. Yeah, so I think this is gonna change. The PK is PK. I kind of forget what composite is. Build SK composite ID. Let's actually look at those docs. Let me change to the main screen here. We can look at the docs together. Uh, does this have a search? Does not. Great. Attributes. I guess composite just tells it which property from the main model to use. Like yeah, the field is called PK and SK, but it wants to use project ID and task ID for the project entity, right? So this is modeling. Yeah, the menu here kind of sucks. Like, I would love to know where modeling is at, right? Data modeling. Okay. All right, so let's see. A composite attribute is a segment. Is a segment of a key based on one of the attributes. Composite attributes are concatenated together from either a partition key or a sort key, which is find and index. Okay. There are two ways to provide a composite. As a composite attribute array, as a composite attribute template. For example, in the following access pattern, locations is made up of a composite attribute store ID, mall ID, building ID, and unit ID, which map to the find attributes in the schema. That didn't super make sense to me. I would have expected him to like first show how he's defining the table, right? With a composite attribute array, each element is the name of the corresponding attribute defining the model. Okay, which that's what I thought. The attributes chosen and the order in which they are specified will translate to how your composite keys will be built. Okay. Okay, so it's kind of what I was thinking, but you can actually concatenate different ones together. So store ID, mall ID, building ID, unit ID. I'm not sure what the label is for. So yeah, it's like there's like redundant stuff here, right? Like, I see what it's saying. Yeah. This thing has all of these attributes. That table probably also has a field called PK and a field called SK, which is just generic, so it can be overloaded. And then here it's saying, okay, for the index, the PK is also going to be the PK because it's just kind of like using that generic name, and the SK is also going to be the SK, but it's going to be made from these values. So it's going to be the PK is just going to be a store ID, and then the SK is like mod ID, building ID, and unit ID combined, which is what this guy is showing here. Okay, so I think that makes sense. Yeah, so this library was like a little more, probably more powerful, and at the same time a little more complicated. But I think that made sense at least. So here it's basically saying, I guess I'm not sure what it's saying here. Like it's saying the PK is going to be the PK. It's not going to be composite. The field ID is going to be the SK. So I guess it's just kind of bringing the PK to be the PK. And then the SK is going to be the group ID. Could you explain to me why the index on the Dynamo table, where we have the primary index, you are saying that the PK field PK has composite of empty, while the SK field SK has composite of group ID? Oh, shit. I guess I want to know what it, when it has like composite empty. Index with sort keys. When using indexes with sort keys, that should be expressed as an index with an SK property. If you don't wish to use a sort key in your model, if you don't wish to use a sort key in your model, but it does exist on the table. If you don't wish to use a sort key in your model, but it does exist on the table, simply use an empty for the composite property. An empty array is still very useful and opens the door to more query opportunities and access patterns like collections. I'm not even sure what that really means here. An empty array is still very useful and opens the door for more query opportunities and access patterns like collections. So what does that entail? Let's see. Yeah, so a collection is basically that, right? Like all the records that share the same PK, which sometimes you definitely want that in Dynamo, right? So you can do querying and like return everything you need pretty fast. yeah, like in some cases you don't want to like do that, right? When the entities are not related, and I guess that's why they use scope, right? So here he has like key condition expression PK. Task app. Okay, I see. So the service is what is actually used for the freaking PK. That's interesting. And with the scope, I guess task app org, task app user. Interesting. Okay. I'm not sure why the SK here for the user had organization in it though, right? Yeah, this is the thing. Like this, like when you're designing for DynamoDB, like things can get pretty custom based on your access patterns, and that's where you start playing with SK and PKs and like overloading things and like kind of like really like using this thing like um do I still have installed NoSQL Workbench, right? Yeah, I still have installed. I haven't opened it in a while though. It opens up. But yeah, like designing for NoSQL, like Dynamo and like things like Cassandra, it's kind of it's important, right? Um, and then you end up with things like this. Like this is a data model for something I made for Diva Copilot, the thing I mentioned before. Like you have this concept of facets, right? And yeah, you can see here you have your PK, your SK, and then you have your other attributes. But then you start like if you look at the table, right? If you visualize the data model, let's see, aggregate view, this is kind of how the table would actually look like, right? So this was just my own custom modeling, right? Which at this point I don't remember that much. This is for the aggregate view. Let's see, how do I see billing presets? How fast is generate preset? Yeah, I don't have any sample data on this one. Let's maybe look at another one here. DynamoDB. This is a more interesting one, right? I think I have way more data here. Yeah, so this is like kind of like a more involved design. I had actually three tables. I didn't go with like a single one because it didn't really make sense for the access patterns, right? But here this is like a sport league table, and you can see here that the league partition brought you, the sport. It brought you teams, and the team partition brought you the players for the team, and then the actual team, right? Like team with a unique ID for soccer is Real Madrid, and then a team with this unique ID and a player ID. That means that the player belongs to the team. Then you have like and also like a player one that had the actual names. So you can get like pretty like it can get complicated, right? And then I feel like with adding like a library like this one, which is like another abstraction layer on top, which doesn't seem like a simple abstraction. Like it introduces like a lot of its own concepts, which I think is fine because it's like trying to, you know, build that abstraction layer on top of Dynamo. And because, working directly with the document client, you probably don't want that, right? So you either want to use this one or you want to use um, Dynamo, what was it called? Dynamo tool set or something. Dynamo DB workbench. No, tool set. What's the name? It's from this guy. Yeah, Toolbox. Which that's kind of like another one that's not as big of an abstraction here. Let's see. And it probably is also like pretty. Yeah, it has 2K stars, pretty active. So I could have gone with this one, but it's a little less. It's actually pretty nice too. I think the TypeScript support is not as great though, so that's why I wanted to try this one out. Um, so I think we just have to familiarize ourselves with it. I'm gonna give this a read tonight too. Um, for now, I'm just gonna ask it to explain like what it's doing there. Because if I do like composite with an empty, I mean, I think all it's doing here, it's saying like, look, the PK is just the same PK from the main table. I think that's what it's doing, right? So it's exporting the entities here. That's fine. It has some Merita here. Interesting. You also have some TypeScript. You have some TypeScript errors in both the group entity file and the member entity file. Actually, and probably also on the message entity file. Can you double check that? It's when you try to export the types from the dot types property. That doesn't seem to exist. So the member, see, it's kind of using the same service. So that means it's all probably going to be on the same partition here. Group ID, contact ID. Group ID, contact name, message count, last seen. Traced, I think that's fine. That has traits. Oh, this summary. So see here, it's doing okay. Like we're gonna have an index. I guess that's the name of the index. Let me see that, because if that's index is my index primary, yeah, I don't like that it's doing that. I'm gonna actually correct this myself here. It's like, so actually, let me just type this out. Yeah, so it's saying that it's gonna create that index. Yeah, it's called primary, but that I don't really follow. Then it's also saying that this is primary. Yeah, I guess it's just reusing the index. That's what it's doing here. And then it's saying here that, member entity, the primary index. Yeah. Yeah, so here it's like it was going crazy with just having a single index. Actually, see, then here it did by contact. Index GSI1. Interesting. So in member it did primary with a PK and a group ID. So it's gonna be group ID as a PK and then contact ID as the SK. Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. Does the primary mean just the main table? Is that a thing? Hmm. I kind of wonder what it's really doing here to it. Like, where is it really defining? Where is it defining in the database level? The actual table. Message entity. Let's maybe look for message entity here. Yeah, it's passing into the service, right? And it's saying that that's just a table name that it's gonna use. Hmm. Entities created by ElectroDB will automatically be isolated from entities created by ElectroDB. What is that? In turn, this means a single DynamoDB table is capable of containing an infinite number of ElectroDB entities. Yeah, okay. That's not necessarily a good idea all the time, or something to be proud of. Entity task, virtual ID task app. Okay. It's saying these are the attributes, and these are the indexes. You know what? I think that when it doesn't have the index, it means that it's basically saying this is a primary partition. Yeah, see? An object containing table indexes, including the values for the table's default partition key and sort key. Oh, that's kind of whack. That's why it's using like the primary word. Yeah, I'm not loving this library, to be honest. I feel like it's trying to do way too much, like already complicating itself. That's why I've scratched it in the past. Kind of surprised that it's that fucking um that much famous, you know? I'm gonna give it a chance. I'm gonna try to stick to it. I'm gonna read the docs, maybe try to understand the whole idea better. Before I call it quits on it. I just gotta get a chance because I don't think it's. I think it might be good once I get it right. Like Cursor seemed to do pretty well on it. Um, so for example here, right, it just seems to be doing like, okay, this is gonna be the primary. Like this is the main partition. This is not an index. It's just weird that it's under the indexes property here, but this is really the primary. And it's saying, look, the PK is gonna be the group ID, which is fine here. It's required. Which is kind of annoying that it's like, okay, look, if it's a PK, you know it's going to be required. But I guess that's just telling the actual message entity for when you actually use the method with methods within it to like put or get that you need the group ID. So, okay, yeah, it's saying, okay, it's going to be the PK and then the SK is going to actually be a timestamp with a message ID, which this was on the original model that Cursor made. And I think that makes sense because the timestamp is going to come first and then the message ID second. Now the thing here is like if the message ID is going to come from WhatsApp, so we can't use a ULID because a ULID is sortable by default. Like if we were controlling the IDs, but these IDs are from WhatsApp, so I think we're gonna have to use the timestamp either way. Um. So yeah, GSI1. Yeah, see, I need to call the GSI1. GSI1 PK, GSI1 SK. It's saying composite. So the PK for the GS1 for this one is going to be group ID, contact ID. Right. by contact. And it's saying that the S is using the timestamp. Right, this is to get all of the messages from a specific user. That makes sense. And the member has no indexes, right? It's gonna be a group ID and a contact ID. Makes sense. And the group, I didn't quite get why the PK was empty. And the SK was a group ID. I guess what this means is that this is just gonna be like WhatsApp as a PK. I kind of wish that it was just a group ID, right? Because that way we could just get everything. Like this is group ID, and this is group ID, right? So on the primary table, we can just use group ID to get everything related to that group, including the group itself, right? So I would think that like this would just be group ID, you know? Instead of having the group ID and the SK. Yeah, that's what I already asked you about it here. So I let's see what it says. So this is a lot here. I'm gonna close it. And as you can see, it has still, I think, a ton of. Wait, this is just linting issues. So let's actually ask it about this, right? Before like reviewing everything. Yeah, this is like the command abstraction, right? Create command handler. See, I don't like this. It's kind of redundant, right? Because you have to define personality twice. I mean, this kind of made sense. This is not that bad. It's not that crazy, right? Yeah, so he kind of did the fix of, that I kind of thought of. I mean, but doesn't ElectroDB support something to avoid that hot partition while still being able to query all groups with one query? For example, if the PK was something like group pound and then the group ID, then you could probably, and then the sort key was something static, right? Then you could probably do a query that was something like, give me all of the items where, give me all of the items that start with group pound, where the sort key is this value, where the value could be something static like group. Doesn't it support something like that when we're defining, um, each entity? Obviously in an ElectroDB way. Yeah, that's the thing with this library. It's like, obviously I still don't know how to use it because I literally just went ahead with it when we started this project. So But I mean, the command stuff made sense. You just gotta fix like its own types. I'll you know, take it easy here. So this is the embedding. Right, model ID, input text, embedding size, normalized true. Yeah, that makes sense because you generate the embedding, you get the response. The text decoder is also from, yeah, no, this is from, this is what I did in my other project. I kind of gonna refresh myself on that. By the way, I noticed that we have no music whatsoever. I'll leave it like that for now. So I gotta remember what text decoder does here. Oh yeah, you decode bytes into strings. Okay. Okay. So this thing is really a, it's just, it returns bytes. That's right. So I guess it decodes it by default in what, UTF-8? UTF-8. Yeah, the default is UTF-8. Makes sense. Which that returns like an object, right? So that's what we're doing. JSON that parse. It's gonna be an embedding, which is just a vector of numbers, right? An input text token count. Okay. And we return that. Okay. Yeah, I kind of remember this now. How do I close this? What? Hmm. Generate embeddings. Let's get a string array. And we could probably do this. Why not do this in parallel? I think this should be. I'm gonna ask it about this one. Here, let me just write it down. I kind of wonder if you do this, does it complain? Yeah. Like, does it literally say group ID required? Yeah. The join that should be automatic. Also, for all of our for all of our dates in DynamoDB, please prefer ISO dates and not milliseconds or seconds since um epoch time. Epoch time. Yes, exactly. Lecture there is a burst explainer natively when you use composite MTRA for a PK. Well, but that's not great, right? Because we're basically losing the main partition, the main partition's ability to also work as a queryable partition, right? Because ideally, you could just do that on the main partition, right? If the PK was something more like I told you, and the SK was something static, right? Oh, Jesus. It's saying that it overcorrected earlier. I mean, let me actually read the. We could probably also read just the deploy. Yeah, I don't like this either. This should just be like what it's gonna use. Is it gonna be group ID or? Oh shit, it's using the fucking. That's kind of horrible. Yeah, I don't love this at all. Like, where is he getting most stars, for example, right? It's like, where is he getting the plural, right? For SK values, the entity value from the model is prefixed onto the key. Yeah, I don't fucking love this at all. I'm gonna sleep on using this library at all. I'm gonna try to read it more, but I don't love it. It's trying to be way too smart, I think. Um, Honestly, I think I'm about to go with the DynamoDB toolbox. Nah, dude, I don't like this abstraction. I don't feel it. It happens to me every time I come back to this library. I never end up liking it. Doesn't feel right, you know? And I've really tried to like make it feel right, but with TypeDORM, which is, I mean, I won't show it to you guys. It felt way better, and you could basically do the same things without much issue, really. I might even try to go to that one and maybe contribute to it. Last commit was 5 months ago. Before that, this thing was still lacking some things. So I'm gonna kind of hold on. Let's maybe look at it something else that's not the something else that's not really a DB. I think the command I kind of want to talk about it with talk about like the redundancy stuff here. I didn't love that it's like kind of duplicating this. The only reason it's doing that is so we can dynamically get the command right. Okay, switching topics, going to the command.ts file and the command pattern that you created here, I did like a couple of things. First, well, I think the idea is fine. It was okay. But I didn't love that there's some redundancy in terms of how you have to define or write the name of the command twice, both as the key of the tuple and as the name key in the second object in the tuple. Second, secondly, I secondly, I didn't love that you are using a lot of casting instead of, you know, schema validation. So if we could use sort for some of this, like for example, to validate the arguments to make sure that the personality is correct, I think that would be best. I think ideally, each command would be able to define its own sort schema for validating its argument types. And then also that way the command text type for the context um, and then also that way and then also that way we could probably do the same sort schema validation with the command name and avoid the dynamic commands that get call, because if we just type check the command name with a schema, after that we'll know that the command name is one of the ones we support, and we can just directly pass that key to the object where the commands are defined. So that simplifies the command object definition to not have to be a tuple, and instead it can just be a simple object where the key is the name of the command. Yeah, because this, if we basically do a type validation the command name, right, narrow it to the commands that we know we support, instead of doing this command that get, we basically just have an object access via the property key, which is already strongly typed, right? And we know we got the right key, then that would just return the command. The command itself would already be probably strongly typed, right? And it wouldn't just be this like generic thing, it would like be a union of the supported commands that we have, right? And then we could just do, yeah, command context and then like do the execute. So I think I'm going to try to make that refactor for now, and tomorrow I'll try to refactor. Yeah, I'll try to refactor the data model part of this. Because honestly, I'm not going to use SelectRDB. I'm going to scratch it. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to have all of this logic, to be honest. I don't know why it's doing a casting here. Shouldn't be doing that. And it should be paging here. I mean, I don't know how that works. If it just goes, I mean, I don't want to get 100,000 messages in memory. That's probably gonna blow out the box limit. So you can see that it doesn't one-shot this type of stuff at all. Like it's trying to do way too much at the same time. So I think I was expecting that. Good. Message items. Tutorial message member stats. It's trying to do its own batching. Do it when like the library already does batching for you. Jesus. Yeah, this needs a lot of work. Like it's not even like if you go to the member entity here, it's not even writing this knowledge summary anywhere, right? It's not. Just completely dropped the ball there. So I mean the whole point of the priming is to actually create the member summary. Yeah, I had a look at the response generator. I don't think it's even using. Oh yeah, it is. This is the last thing that I have to look at. So I think the response generator is gonna definitely need love. I know I've been kind of quiet, but this needs some love, I think. Maybe not as much, but definitely needs some tweaking. I think the priming definitely needs a lot of tweaking. Um, yeah. The list corrector also needs a lot of tweaking. Like like I said, I think this can just all be done with an LLM instead of like having our own like hard coded logic. And yeah, like some of these things were kind of underwhelming, to be honest. Let's see what I did with the vector. Vector store service, ensure index, put vectors, create vector store service. Let's see how this, I gotta see how this API works because I'm not super familiar with it. But here I can just see how I just made a mistake. That data type is missing here. I think it's not even using this, bro. It's like it created it, but it's not using it anywhere. It's funny. All right, guys. So yeah, this was let's send it this so it starts at least fixing the command file. But there's a lot of work to be done here to really improve this. I think the first pass was just not great. But again, I think it just tried to do way too much for phase two, you know? I think if anything, phase two should have been like just the DynamoDB data model. Phase three could have been just the command, like implementing the command interface and logic. The third one could have just been like maybe the response generator, right? And then the fourth one could have been the priming coupled with the vector store. Because like the part that it missed was actually converting messages to vectors so that before it replies, it can actually look for similar messages in the past and like try to come up with a better answer based on those. So like the context that it would get in each message would be like not only the last 20 messages, but the messages that seem related to what is being talked about. What is it doing here? Okay, so it did change it. Yeah, so it still didn't fix it completely, right? Let's see what it did. It's still thinking. Okay. Dude, why is it doing a tuple here? Jesus. That sucks. Yeah, this is already not great. I guess I'm gonna leave it here. Yeah, we're gonna have to work on this step by step, file by file, and like I'll try to like chop this up into smaller pieces and go from there. Peace.